Three, two. From high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly, this is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for joining us on this episode. Share this episode with your friends and your fishing partners out there. Just go ahead and text it to them when we're done here and let them take a listen too. Also, you can now watch us watch these episodes on YouTube. So just go to YouTube, type in Southeastern Fly and follow the Southeastern Fly page, and you'll know whenever a new episode drops there too. If you get into watching people on YouTube, which I really don't do much, but there are a ton of people out there that do watch folks on YouTube. That's how they pass their time, and they don't really watch TV or anything like that. They just get on YouTube and watch it, and before they go to bed at night, all kinds of different ways to see it. So my name is David Perry. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself on these. So if you've heard this, stick around for by the time you get to the forward arrow on your play on your podcast, this will be over. So for those of you that are new to Southeastern Fly, my name is David Perry. I am the owner of Southeastern Fly. Also, some people are calling in SEF now. I'm the host of the Southeastern Fly podcast. I'm the owner and the head guide at Southeastern Fly, which is a guide service here in Middle Tennessee. We got on the Elk River near Lynchburg, the Caney near Cookeville, kind of near Cookeville, the Collins River from Muskie, the Stones River in Murfreesboro. That's definitely a spring river that we get on, springtime river, not a spring river, but it's a springtime river that we get on, especially when the white bass are running. So I spin a lot of plates, if you will. We teach, we do casting lessons. I do online Zoom one-on-one courses with folks, just a lot of different things. Our coaching, one-on-one Zoom coaching, we do that. Just a lot of things that we do here. So we do that with all levels of anglers. It amazes me the folks that have a lot of knowledge and have been fishing a long time, and I would consider them a really good angler. And they want to do some online courses, stuff like that, or online coaching, not courses, but online coaching with me, just to talk about new ideas, and a lot of really cool things have been coming out of that. So I want to make sure that y'all know that. So yeah, I'm not just another pretty face that sits around here. My wife wholeheartedly agrees with that. That's one thing that she will agree with me on, is I am not a pretty face. I'm not sure what that means, but anyway. So she says I am right about that one thing, that I am not a pretty face. But here we go. So all right, let's roll. Let's talk about fly fishing myths, because boy, I've heard them. And I think what I'm going to do is, when we finish this one, this episode, it's released here in a week or two. I think I'm going to follow up on it on the podcast by Fly Fishing Podcast by Southeastern Fly on the Facebook group. I'm going to follow up with it on there and see what other myths we can do. But one of the big myths that I heard, and this was a few weeks ago, is, hey, when the water's this clear, you can only catch fish on 7X. Uh, yeah, not so sure about that, because we caught it on some 5X tippet that day. We caught plenty of our share of fish. It was a really good day. One of the better days that we've had as far as numbers go, and some quality, not the biggest fish in the river, but we had some quality too. So while everybody was out there, or this person was out there trying to fish 7X with a size 22 midge, they kind of struggled, and that's where they were ending up. And we threw the usual same old stuff on there, and it was interesting that we caught our share of fish, and probably their part of their share too. So I would say this. What's the fish's view? So thinking about 7X, I got 7X, I got a little midge on there. Number one, we're almost all of us are using fluoro, so that's supposed to take away some of the visibility of the leader to the fish, or the tippet to the fish. So that's part of it. But also, what are they seeing when they look up? If they're looking at a dry, you got a little bit. I mean, I use fluoro for dry flies too. Don't kid yourself. I don't swap all that stuff out. But yeah, I do some of that. And what's the fish looking? They're looking up at a dry, they're looking up at a nymph, maybe. Do you really think that they're paying that much attention to the leader. What about the hook coming out of the bottom there? It's got a barb on it. That doesn't look natural. Really, nothing in nature is really that straight. Uh, so, what exactly are the fish keying into on that leader? I'm not saying that sometimes it's not important, but that's probably not your first stop whenever the fish aren't biting, is to start going down on Tippet and getting down to 7X. Actually, 7X, it's probably time for me to go sit in the shade for a while or string up the hammock and see if I can't take a nap, because that's a tough way to fish. Not saying I haven't ever done it, but I have caught fish on 5X when everybody else is using everybody else. I say that in air quotes. Everybody else is using 7X. We all know that everybody isn't always using 7X. The next myth that I love to hear is you can't do this. Just fill in the blank. And I've got a couple blanks to fill in down here. You can't, well, the one that we just talked about, you can't catch fish unless you're using 7X. We can spin that around. You can't catch fish in this river if you don't use nymphs. You can't catch fish today if you're not using streamers. I'll tell you this, there's nothing in this world and nothing 100% in fly fishing. So if you think that you can't do this and you can't do that because someone tells you to, I say malarkey. I don't use that strong of a word very often. There's nothing in fly fishing that's 100%. There's no 100% out there. There are no absolutes in fly fishing. There's one exception to that. And that is if your fly is not in the water, on the water, however you're fishing it, it's in the air you're casting, or you're undoing a knot, or you're tying on different stuff, different flies, whatever. If that fly's not in the water, you stand almost zero chance of catching a fish. Uh, if your fly's not in the water. So get out there, get some time in the water, and you can dispel those myths of you cannot, if that makes sense. So moving on, let's talk about wind knots. I think that's a big one. I got a wind knot. Okay, that's a myth. All right, you didn't get a wind knot. Okay, not too long ago, I was watching somebody cast, and I got a hold of their fly and was taking a look at it. I said, "Oh, you got to let me take this knot out." "Oh, is that a wind knot?" What I want to say is, no, it's not a wind knot. It's the wind's not blowing. The wind wasn't blowing this day. It was 1,000,000 degrees out, as it has been most of June and July. It's been crazy hot here in the South. Uh, Now, there was no wind, but there was 100% humidity. It could be a humidity knot, maybe, but I don't think it was even that. I don't think humidity could tie a knot. I know the wind didn't tie that knot. So what? So the guy says, "Oh, is that a wind? That's the wind knot." And I was like, "No, ain't." I just didn't say anything. But so some of the ways that you can stop the, again, air quotes, wind knots is stop by stopping higher. If you're casting overhand, of course, stop harder. So don't come back and stop and then restop and then restop, and don't come back to a slow stop to where you kind of come back real slow and then finally have a momentary pause and come forward. Let that leader straighten out some, get a little more power behind it. I say power, and power is more in your thumb. So hard stop. When you stop, let that leader straighten out, uh, and then start to come forward. It One thing to think about. Now, this is a hard visualization. Can I say that 3 times? Probably not. But that is when you're coming back for your back cast, watch the tip of your rod. And I like to say, whenever that leader is, or that fly line is straightened out in the back, then it's time to come forward. It's almost just an instant before that. And depending on your timing, one way to look at that is when you start to come back with your back cast, and you're headed toward that stop. When you're stopping, when that fly line passes the tip of the rod. So if you're looking up at the tip of the rod and you're watching your fly line, come back like I'm doing now. If you're on YouTube, you see me up there looking like that. I don't know what the heck I'm looking at, but let's say that the tip of the rod is up there. When that fly line comes back and crosses the tip of that rod, the plane of the tip of that rod, it's just about time to start coming forward then. And it takes a whole lot longer than what we think it does. I got to fish the other day, and I found myself coming forward too fast because I don't get to fish enough apparently. Uh, and I started doing what I was teaching. That's crazy. I know that I was actually doing something myself that I've been teaching people for a while to do, and that is to let that fly line come across the plane of that rod or the tip of that rod, wherever it meets the tip of that rod in the air. Hopefully they're not hitting. They shouldn't be hitting. Mine weren't hitting. I was just wasn't waiting long enough for the line to unfold. And as I did that, I kind of found a spot where okay, the tip of the rod is stopped, the fly line is coming back, and oh, there's the tip. And it always seemed to take a little longer than I thought it should. Uh, Speaking of wind, the wind is blowing. You can probably hear it out there. The dogs are outside, leaned up against the door to the office here. But you can hear that wind blowing out there. It's crazy how much it's blowing today because we're getting some of the remnants from this hurricane that was down in the Gulf. But anyway, so maybe you get some wind, a wind knot today, but probably if you're casting correctly, you probably wouldn't. So here's a hint. It isn't normally the wind, Johnny. It's normally your casting. So if you're getting wind knots, just try those things. Stop higher, harder. Let the line unfold. When it crosses the tip of the rod, you're about ready to start going forward. It'll straighten out right after that. Then you can come forward. Deliver it with a little bit of power in your thumb. Uh, Myth number four. I think this is number four. One, two, three. Yes, myth four. Myth four is if I straighten out my arms, it's going to make the fish look bigger. Don't do that. Don't try to make the fish look bigger that way. There are a million ways to make a fish look bigger. That ain't one of them. It really what it does is it makes your arms look pretty straight and you're very unnatural. The fish doesn't even look natural. What I find is people start trying to squeeze the fish, and then the fish is like, oh, you know. Make sure you have your some bend in the elbows. The fish is the fish is what the fish is. Um, try not to straighten your arms out. I I love to see somebody's elbows if I can, unless they're taking a closer picture to kind of get something out of the way. And I'll talk about that in a second too. But yeah, don't straighten your arms out. You look like a goober. Don't do that. Uh, Try not to drop the fish either. Imagine if you're getting your picture taken and somebody says, "Well, let's go ahead and push you off the roof of the house, and then we'll take your picture." It probably doesn't feel real great to you, and I'm sure it probably doesn't feel real great to the fish either. Also, since we're talking about taking pictures, and I've been trying to do this for years, sometimes it gets you. Sometimes you're able to, and sometimes you don't. If you fish with me, you'll know. I'll often say, "I'm going to turn the boat this way and get rid of that landmark there, whatever the landmark is that I'm trying to get out of that." Only because you don't want everybody looking at your picture. I mean, your buddy, you might show your a picture to your buddy or text it to him. And I have had somebody, I text them a picture the next day that they're fishing right there in that same spot. So careful there, but try to cut out all the obvious landmarks. So if nothing else, you can go catch it again. But it's really let let part of the mystery of fishing is finding them yourself, or letting, in my case, letting the guide go get them, go find them. So anyway, leave some of that mystery. Don't try not to spread it around the internet. As I said, sometimes you're just gonna have them. They're just gonna be in there. There's gonna be a landmark in there, and you're just gonna leave it in there. And I get it, but golly, every picture shouldn't be that way. Some of them should have fuzzy backgrounds where nobody can tell where the heck they are. If you've got an iPhone, there's a setting for that too. So the next myth is hang on a second. Okay. All right. I got something going on here that I need to go take care of in a minute. So the next myth that I can think of is fish are in the middle or the other side of the river. I've talked about this several different times. And what that is a myth. That's totally a myth. Uh, sometimes they are in the middle and sometimes they are on the other side of the river, but fish are often I see them rising where people walk in the water so many times. They're rising, it would be ankle deep water and there'd be a fish rising and I'd be just like, that can't be a trout. and then you cast over there with a real tiny midge or something like that, something that you know is going to hang out in the water column before it hits the bottom, and I'll be darned if you can't catch it. So walking up and you can sit at any access and watch this, which is fun to do, as long as it's not somebody watching you. But you'll see people that walk right up, walk into the water, cast into the same run that everybody else casts in it, and 2 minutes before they get there, there's rising fish right there where they took their first or second step. It is crazy. Sometimes something bigger and badder is in the middle of the river, like for instance, like a paddlefish, or a striper, or I don't know, name something, a big brown, and it's not going to eat your little midge or your little nymph, but it sure would spook those little fish into more shallower water. So if you're looking for a good place to fish your way into the river and fish the whole thing. Uh, Fish where you're going to stand before you stand there, not after you stand there. Fish all types of water. I think that's a big one. Uh, and that's what got me on this is the fish are on the middle of or the other side of the river. Is if you fish your way in, you may want to fish just a little midge, a little dry with a midge dropper or something like that. If you're going to wade in, you might want to fish your way in with that, and then when you get to where you normally go, hopefully you've caught a couple fish on that midge. You might want to change over to your nymph and start nymphing. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. A dry dropped in right on the first little elevation change sometimes works. So fish all types of water. Don't get hung up on I'm going to run out and fish this run that I always fish and that everybody else fishes. Learn to fish the different water types. So learn a little bit different discipline. Uh, you don't have to learn how to high stick versus regular nymph versus dry versus all that, but learn them one at a time. You don't have to know them all at once. Learn them one at a time. Learn some different techniques. It and we do this. We fished dry droppers the other day for a long time. Uh, the time before that, we fished them a short time, and I thought I'll come back and do this again. And we fished him for a long time and caught a couple of little fish, nothing huge. But I mean, we were kind of working on this guy's technique of, all right, I need to learn how to do this and I won't do it unless somebody makes me. So he tried to make me be out the bad guy. And like, I'm making him do anything. But he really wanted to learn that. So we really worked on that, a little softer presentation, a little longer tippet, a little longer leader. Uh, so we worked on that, and people will come and they'll want to do hoppers. A lot of times when people go out west, they'll get up with me before going and say, hey, I want to just work on my hopper game a little bit so that I'm ready. And we'll fish almost all the water, but we'll really focus on the water that resembles where they're going, or it has a lot of the same features and features of where they're going. Can't a lot of times get exact, but we can get through and get we can get close to it. So I guess there's more than one way to make a taco, and there's more than one way to fish all the types of water. So, all right. So what did we go over here? I had it written down here, so let me look. Oh, yeah. Can only catch a fish on 7X. Okay, not true. You cannot was the second one. You cannot. There's nothing 100%. So don't want to hear that. It's a wind knot. That's a great excuse, but that's usually not true. You straighten your arms out, you're going to make the fish look bigger. That is absolutely a myth. Fish are in the middle or the other side of the river, so why would I fish where I'm fixing to step? Because sometimes there are big fish resting there where you're just about ready to step up into. So anyway, remember we're on YouTube now. Most of the episodes from here on are going to be on YouTube, so subscribe to the Southeastern Fly YouTube channel. And send that to friends. Like us there. If you get a chance, we appreciate a good review on wherever you listen to podcasts. So thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share it with your friends and your fishing partners. You just listened to Fly Fishing Myths on Southeastern Fly, and see you next time.